Yeah, hey, welcome to Politics Alive with Neil. We are broadcasting from deep inside the belly of the beast, New York City. We're here fighting the liberal Leviathan with nothing more than thoughts, ideas, and a love for America. Politics Alive, the show for patriots, but Democrats are welcome here too. And if you're a regular listener, welcome back. But if this is your first time, strap in, sit tight, and be prepared to be awoken from the hypnotic dream state forced upon us by the lotus eaters in the mainstream media. All right, yeah, so depending when you're listening to this on the rebroadcast or live, you may be hearing me coming right after the great Joe Bennett. So Joe is invited to stick around today's topic, or not, we never know. He's an international man of mystery. But today's topics will be, we're going to talk about the Supreme Court mainly. So we'll talk about a couple of rulings. So, so before, we'll just start. Let's get started. First of all, it has been I'll just do a little, just also to keep Jason in the loop. I'm just going to do a little monologue or a couple of thoughts on at least the Supreme Court Second Amendment case, and then we'll either go into discussion or we won't. But I just want to say, first of all, it's been a rough year and a half for those of us patriotic, real Americans, as I sort of jokingly would say. But for any of those on the right, it's been a rough year and a half. We've had 19 months ago, Joe Biden was installed. He moved into the White House and he became the resident of the United States. So that was a sad day, but back then we had no idea how dark things would get. So speaking for myself, I figured I didn't like, first of all, speaking for myself, I did not like it. I figured he'd be bad, but essentially just be like a centrist Bill Clinton type or even an Obama type, except in Biden's case, he'd have dementia. Still, he ran as the guy that, he would unify America. He would listen to both sides. So I figured, you know what, we'll just have to bite the bullet the way we did with Obama. And an American will come out the other side. At least with Obama, I would just say, I'm going on too many tangents today, but with Obama, he was the first black president, so there was at least that. So even though I didn't like him or his policies, I was like, you know what, that's pretty good. That part's pretty good. It's about time we had a black president. He certainly was. He wasn't. He wasn't a mess. He wasn't like a Jesse Jackson type with all sort. Or an Al Sharpton type, just full of corruption. So there was at least that upside. So Biden did not have that. So anyway, turns out, how bad could it be? It's pretty bad. Since he got inaugurated, installed, call it what you will. He was inaugurated. His administration has been taken over by the far left. He hasn't not tried at all to unify the red states and the blue states. Even worse, as somebody on the right, he attacks and villainizes us constantly. He calls us white supremacists and domestic terrorists. Why? Because we speak out of school board meetings against CRT, or because we're against sexualized drag shows for 8-year-olds. So we are domestic terrorists. On top of that, just going down the list real quick, Biden, the USA is no longer energy independent. Fuel costs that used to be $2 a gallon under Trump now cost as much as $6 under Biden. The Keystone Pipeline has been shut down. Our education system is getting worse. Inflation is out of control. Wages are staying the same, which is stagflation. Homelessness is rising. Our border is wide open. Immigration writ large is out of control. Violent and nonviolent crime is skyrocketing. Criminals walk free as liberal DAs in Democrat-run cities let them go without bail or even charges being pressed in many cases. And to top it all off, we are getting involved to varying degrees in the stupid Russia-Ukraine war, which once again, or not once again, but Putin is a bad guy. but your average American could not even find Ukraine on a map if you gave them a blank map. So why are we sending $63 billion of our money that we really need here at home over there? But, I guess, and not to mention, we already know, it's not a secret, the Biden family has received millions of dollars from Ukraine, as consultants for energy companies. Of course, and now I'm talking about Joe Biden's brother and his son. The son, as one example, was hired as a consultant for a natural gas company. The guy's never worked in natural gas, but he's making millions of dollars. Anyway, so we all know the Bidens are corrupt. So Biden is acting in the best interest. Well, he's acting in the best interest of illegal aliens. He's acting in the best interest of, Ukraine. He's acting in the best interest of Zelensky, but he's definitely not acting in the best interest of actual Americans. So instead of doing anything about it, what are the rest of the Democrats doing? Well, they're holding January 6 hearings in Congress because a few rowdy Trump supporters trespassed for a few hours. I'm not excusing it, but they weren't armed. It wasn't an insurrection. They were just people that thought there was election fraud, not totally without reason. Even if there wasn't, all they wanted was a fair counting of the votes. They didn't want to take over the government. And anyone that thinks that they did is just silly. But anyway, that's what the Democrats are with all the problems. They're having these stupid witch hunt hearings. They're not even real hearings because it's like a court trial, but only the prosecution gets to talk. Nobody's allowed to rebut it. But having said all that, we are not even going to talk about any of those things today. My point is simply that it's been a rough year. Been a rough year and a half. And things have not felt good for some time. In some ways, it was starting to feel like the sun was setting on the great American empire, that this was it, the end was near. But in the midst of all this darkness, we had a few glimmers of hope. Some lights appeared on the horizon, and that's what we will talk about today. Two great things happened. The Supreme Court ruled in the case in favor of the Second Amendment. So the case was... Well, let's talk. So the two things happened. One, there was an abortion case and the Second Amendment case. So let's just talk about the Second Amendment case real quick. That case was the New York State Pistol and Gun Club versus New York. And it's all about concealed carry permits. So basically, a concealed carry permit just means you can, if you own a gun, you can carry it on you. You have to hide it, but you can take it out of your house. So for the last 99 years, New York City had a law that's saying you had to show cause to get a concealed carry permit, which means you had to show you needed it. So you had to prove you had a compelling reason to carry it. So you could not use, that almost sounds like, that sounds kind of reasonable. But if your excuse was, I live in a high crime area, that was not good enough. It was so strict that basically nobody got it. And I lived in New York before and now. To get a concealed carry permit, it's basically a couple billionaires have it. Howard Stern has one. Robert De Niro has one. If you're an important celebrity, you can get it, but basically no one has it. Nobody. So here we are. We're in America. There is a Second Amendment that literally says we have the right to bear arms. There was already a Supreme Court case about that a decade ago called Heller, saying that the Second Amendment applies to individuals and that individuals, regular people, have the right to bear arms. But in actual practice, if there's a right that nobody can exercise, is it really a right? If there's a First Amendment, but you needed a permit to speak freely and then the government just would not issue it to any regular citizens, then do you really have a First Amendment? So anyway, this group sued New York. They won. The court said New Yorkers could get concealed carry permits. So predictably, the other good thing about it is it's a New York case, but it applies to any place that puts these restrictions. So it's good for all of us, for all of America. And actually, it's great for you guys in LA too. So predictably, the left, and I'm here in New York, they're freaking out. New York City is going to become the wild, wild west, says New York's mayor, Eric Adams. The governor vowed to fight it. They even go so far to say they might ignore it. They might ignore the Supreme Court ruling. Since when do we do that? The last time I remember a state ignoring a Supreme Court ruling was in the South when they tried to integrate the schools. We had to send down the National Guard. But in this case, if New York State ignores it, Joe Biden will not be sending the National Guard. Anyway, as far as it becoming the Wild Wild West, just to get a gun permit you still have to go through the process. They just can't deny you at the end of it if you haven't done anything wrong. I'm in the process right now of getting a New York City permit just to have a gun inside my house. It takes about 2 years. So I'm about 10 months into a 2-year process, and I have to do a background check, and I'm going to do the concealed carry permit too, and that's going to take about another year. So it takes about 3 years to do it. So the left is freaking out, like, oh, everyone's going to, it's going to become crazy. First of all, the background check is so thorough. If you've ever been in jail, even if you have moving violations that are like DUIs or speeding above at the whatever point it becomes criminal, I think over 25 miles over the limit. If you have any domestic violence, if you have any mental illness, you will get denied. It's only the most law-abiding people can get it. So right now, all the criminals have it, but and then also I have to be interviewed in person by the police. I have to sign a document saying I give them permission. I waive my Fourth Amendment right, so they have the right to search my house at any point without a warrant. Like I said, fingerprints, all kinds of stuff, multiple background checks, hundreds of dollars in fees. So it's no criminal is going to be getting, the people with these concealed carry permits are not going to be criminal. So, and then the other issue with the Supreme Court case is, they keep saying, oh, first of all, crime's not going to go up. But even if it did, it's a constitutional right. You cannot say crime is going to go up so you don't have a right. If you don't like this law, there are ways you can pass national legislation that affects it, but also you can change the Constitution. If you don't like the Second Amendment, just change it. So to all the gun grabbers out there, I just want to say, if you want to ban guns, just do it the legal way. And then I guess sort of on that, everyone's saying, oh, well, can't we do some basic, can't we have some basic, common sense gun control? Well, first of all, we do. They keep saying, the governor of New York said, it's like a musket, that only applies to muskets. Well, first of all, it's concealed carry. So a musket is a giant, long thing. So, that doesn't even make sense. Plus, at the time they wrote the Constitution, private citizens had cannons, and private citizens owned, not everyone, but there were private citizens that owned battleships. So since then, at one point we had full rights. You could order a gun from Sears. It would come in the mail. But then we had the National Firearms Act of 1934 and about 10 other ones before that. So we're very restricted since then. I'm getting a message. It's the Bill Maher. Yeah, well, maybe we'll play that at the end. So I just wanted to add that. Yeah, so there is a way to change it if you don't like the gun. So that was good news number one. I don't know if Joe Bennett has any thoughts on that. But if, so maybe while Joe's away, I think he stepped away, let's play this Bill Maher. This is, I actually saw this, so I will play this. This is about an 8-minute clip from Bill Maher called I Want My Lawyer.
And finally, new rule, if there's one thing the Johnny Depp trial proved, it's that in this world, you got to have a good lawyer. I won't rehash the gory details of the case, but there were some bad stumbles on this side. While conversely, thanks to Camille Vasquez, Johnny's name has been cleared, if not his bloodstream. Point being, you need a good representative in court, which made me think, where else does that term representative come up? Oh, yeah, Congress. You see, in the American political system, the people are represented by two separate yet equally stupid groups. The Republicans, who normalize constitutional crimes, and the Democrats, who pit identity groups against each other. These are their stories. Last week, an 85% Latino congressional district on the border with Mexico, which had always voted heavily Democratic, flipped to the red team. And the campaign manager for the losing Democrat said, "We gave up a reliably Democratic congressional seat for no reason at all. We deserve to know why." Well, aside from your terrible attitude, I'm going to tell you why. Because these voters stopped seeing your candidate as their lawyer. That's why. Their message to you was, "I'm an American now. I'm here. Be my lawyer, not the lawyer for the migrants showing up in my backyard." Every month I see a new poll reporting how much Latinos despise the woke term Latinx. It's about as popular with them as a reboot of Speedy Gonzales. Even the country's oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid. Yes, and Latino voters are fluid. And more of them now than ever are identifying as Republican. So are Asian Americans, whose support for Democrats is down 16 points since the last election. A lot of that is because, in the name of achieving equity in schools, Democrats in deep blue cities have made it a mission to eliminate the advanced programs at which Asian kids excel. Asian parents said, "Okay, I wish all kids well, not a racist, but I need someone who acts like my lawyer." If you're a parent and wanted schools to reopen a lot sooner than they did after COVID shutdowns, or think maybe your kid is getting a bad education, partly because it's nearly impossible to fire a lousy teacher, yeah, you're going to say, "Congratulations, teachers, you got yourself a good lawyer. The Democratic Party's always got your back, 100%. But I've noticed my kid is kind of an idiot. So I may be looking for new representation." President Biden wants to cancel hundreds of billions of dollars in student debt. Okay, but the poorer 2/3 of American kids who don't get a college degree are going to say, "Why should the people who didn't go to college and make less money subsidize the people who did go and make more? You want me to chip in so some liberal arts college can build a bigger rock wall? You're not my lawyer." A universal basic income probably sounds pretty good to a lot of people struggling without a college degree. And a number of cities have been running pilot programs in guaranteed income. But the West Hollywood program had to be suspended because it was unconstitutional. They set up a program where 25 residents were to get $1,000 for 18 months, but only if you identified as LGBT, the rest of that. Why? Because they need money more than any other people? Because no one in West Hollywood will hire a gay person? When he ran in 2020, Bernie Sanders said he would legalize marijuana on his first day as president, but that the business of selling pot would be awarded first to those who suffered most from the drug war. And you know what? I can't argue with that instinct. The drug war has been a horrendous instrument of prejudice and punishment for racial minorities, so it seems fair that they jump the line for weed franchises the way Indians did for casinos. But it's also what's holding up Republican support for legalizing weed nationally, which would be good for everybody. And these are the hard, practical choices the Democrats have to weigh. Redress the past, or reach out to the gettable white voter who says, "You know what, I'd like a shot at getting in the pot business." But to do that, our entire audience. But to do that, I'm going to need a good lawyer who fights for me. And then there's abortion. A difficult issue for the Democrats to lose on, but they're trying. For decades, liberals have said if only men could get pregnant, this wouldn't even be an issue. And abortion rights are women's rights. Well, that's wrong now. Or as the kids say, hold up. When the wokey end of the progressive spectrum talks about abortion now, they shy away from that word women and prefer terms like birthing people or people who menstruate, because somewhere there's a trans man who's pregnant, and I say good for him, and I'll be looking for his story somewhere in a future issue of Ripley's Believe It or Not. Oh, Democrats, let's take the first fucking word a human animal understands, mama, and replace it with something best understood by 4 Trotskyites at Berkeley. As with all these issues, the wavering voter is saying to her lawyer, the Democratic Party, hey, so happy for you that you have so many other clients and that you care so much about their problems and all the pro bono work you do. But you're supposed to be my lawyer. The Democrats need to be like the lawyers you see on billboards. You hurt, we fight. Injured? Get the gorilla. Minzy makes them pay. And my favorite, just because you did it doesn't mean you're guilty. It doesn't? I think it does. But that's the thing about a lawyer. Their clients don't care if they shade the truth. They care about winning. You know what I want the Democratic Party to do? Win on the Trump issue. Finish what you started with the January 6th hearings and make sure the guy who absolutely will try to steal the next election can't run in it. That's what I want my lawyer to do.
All right, that was Bill Maher. So basically, he just spent one. I enjoyed it, but he spent about 8 minutes, essentially saying that the Democrat Party needs to basically just a long way of saying America first. Be my lawyer. So I guess he didn't want to say Trump's thing, but yeah, Mr. Bennett, you've been sitting quietly and patiently. Do you have thoughts on Bill Maher or the Second Amendment or any of this stuff going on?
I'm going to stay out of the Second Amendment thing. As you know, my position is that I think it should be repealed and that the gun rights should be decided by each state. So that's my position hasn't changed. No matter what the Supreme Court says, it's just my position. It's my vote and my opinion, and that's it. But I'm just one guy. What Bill Maher said is some theme that I've talked about, and I'm probably not always gentle enough about it. But, I basically try to say in as many ways as I can that when you are elected to be representatives, that you should represent as many people in your district as possible. And what I see the Democrats doing is getting drawn into these kind of weird, ultra liberal campus issues, like something like you said, coming out of UC Berkeley or out of NYU or something, but something that. How
dare you insult my school, my alma mater, NYU.
I thought you went to Columbia. Okay, I'll use Columbia.
No. NYU is. I loved NYU, but it's actually a perfect example because they are ridiculously. They are that kind of liberal. They do. They didn't silence me, but they buy into all of that stuff. Yes, they are as ridiculous. I was just saying that just because I'm at NYU, but yes, NYU is very silly. But please continue.
Well, my simple point is that if you have a choice between representing 0.01% of your constituents' issues or 90% of your constituents' issues, an issue that's shared by 90% of your constituents, the 90% issue is the issue you should focus on. That should get almost 100% of your time, not not these kind of weird exotic issues coming out of campuses where people don't live in the real world.
All right, we're taking a break.
95.1 KVCM Monarch Radio, the voice of Valley College.
Yeah, we're gonna we'll hear a little bit more from Joe when we're back from this informational segue.
95.1 Monarch Radio, the voice of Valley College, KVCM. Yeah.
Right. I know everyone is on their fingernails. What are people hanging by? Everyone's on something nails. Everyone's on. What are people on? Nails. Help me out, Joe. People are like, I'm on, not on hog nail. I'm on pig nails. No, I'm on.
Everyone's on edge.
On edge. No, but I'm
on edge.
But I don't know. It's more like when you're just like very careful. Like I'm on pintails, or I don't know.
Pins and needles.
I'm on pins and needles. Yes, everyone's, but not me, but our audience is on pins and needles because whether or not he stays around and talks about abortion, I don't know. But I do want to hear Joe's closing thoughts on. He was talking about Bill Maher and the Democrat Party not really being, just if I'm saying it wrong, correct me. But just saying they're catering to a small minority of their base while ignoring the large, and it's the elite part of their base. Basically, the politicians are part of an elite class, and they're serving the fellow elites, but at the expense of their rank and file members. Did I get that correct? Or either way, just set us straight on the record, Mr. Bennett.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example from my life, and no judgment. But I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area for 7 years, and I went to many conferences. I worked with the public, so I met random people, every day that I worked. By the time I left the Bay Area, I had met well over 1,000 people, and then I went to school as well. I went to college in San Francisco for computer science, and we were right next to one of the arts buildings, so I had friends that would go there, and I have to say, I am trying to think. There's only 2 transgender people that I met in 7 years that I can remember. I have a very good memory. There's only 2 transgender people that I met. So it's not a small issue. You need an electron microscope to see this issue. If you are Nancy Pelosi, you have 800 and roughly, I would say 850,000, 900,000 constituents. Excluding that she's the Speaker of the House, so technically every American is a constituent at this point. But just her district is almost 1 million, and of that, let's say. There are, 35 people that are transitioning or have transitioned. So when you give a disproportionate amount of attention to 35 people, you're not representing the million. And that's what I see happening, not necessarily with Nancy Pelosi, who doesn't seem to represent anyone but the rich. But, when you see politicians getting twisted up in these issues and wondering how to handle it and trying to address it delicately and walk on eggshells, you should respectfully ignore it and work on issues that affect the majority of people. You're not sentencing someone to death by not doing exactly what they want. Leah Thomas wouldn't commit suicide if she wasn't led on to the women's swimming team. That's ridiculous.
Well, yeah.
She said that when she was a guy, she felt that having been born a guy, she didn't feel comfortable in her own body. Therefore, she transitioned. She didn't say, I have to do swimming or I'm going to jump off of the Golden Gate Bridge. She never said that. So why do you get this kind of activist class on the far left going in and making this, is that, oh, you have to include her because she was on the men's team when she was a man? You don't have to, because she went through full puberty into manhood, completed puberty, then transitioned. So she, will have that enormous advantage of the bigger body, the longer arms. And of course, it showed up in the swimming results. And a lot of women who were born women and who are going to have to, at some point in their life, go through the incredible pain of childbirth and the incredible responsibility of breastfeeding and raising a child for 18 years, whether or not her male partner sticks around.
Yeah. So it's all, and I'll just add on my end, I'm fine. Like if any, for me, it's a lot of attention to that issue, but I don't even care. Like if it's a matter of do trans or any people, if something's going on where they're not getting their basic human rights, then, I think everyone, left, right, and center is in favor of that happening. But I guess I draw the line at children. When they start doing stuff with children, that's too far for me.
Well, not only that, but your basic human rights don't include being on the opposite gender's Olympic qualifying swim team.
Yeah, of course.
Or being in the NCAA. It is what it is. It just doesn't include that. That's way beyond, and it's not human rights. That's pushing an agenda. If the majority of people, first, if it actually hurts the people that you would be participating with, which we have overwhelming evidence that it did, it ruined some girls' careers that they spent, over a decade working towards. What about them? That's consequential. So your human rights shouldn't ruin other people's rights. So you need to focus on, while this was happening, the homeless population was exploding in the Bay Area to the point that, and I've traveled to the third world twice in my life, through Mexico and the Philippines. And I have not seen the kind of poverty in Mexico and the Philippines that I see in Oakland, California. There are not tent cities in Manila. It's unheard of. When you have the building is on fire, you don't say, I wonder if we should paint it a different color. And that's what the politicians in these kind of ultra progressive areas like the Bay Area do constantly, and the people there are begging for them to address the elephant in the room, address the homelessness issue. And they say, well, should we take down this mural of George Washington at this elementary school, and should we rename all the schools? No, build housing to help homeless people off the streets. Should we have a Chinese person on the school board that doesn't speak English, so that way we're more inclusive of our immigrant communities? My son just stepped on a needle and he has an infection now in his blood. But should we allow? Should we give legal
personhood to the elephant in the zoo? Yeah. Before I move on to abortion, which I do want to get to in a second, let me just ask you this, because you I know you're very free thinking, but I think you're a little bit on the liberal side of things. So here's a question I'm going to misnomer you as our liberal Sherpa, but everything you just talked about. So this will be my final question for you, and I know you have to get some sleep too, although you're welcome to stick around for abortion, but as our liberal Sherpa, somebody that could at least maybe have a better sense of what's going on in people's.
By the way, I'm a leftist. I'm not a liberal, and there's
okay. So you're leftist. You're a leftist Sherpa. Perfect.
Okay.
So we're both in agreement that, and Bill Maher too is, and the people in San Francisco are also in agreement that their politicians are not serving their interests, and they're doing all sorts of, giving illegal aliens the right to vote in their local elections and all kinds of stuff that don't serve the interests. And yet, all of these people, even the kookiest ones, like this guy Scott Wiener that, is doing stuff like decriminalizing pedophilia for gay men. And then he's the one that was behind the bill that decriminalized if you knowingly pass on HIV to someone. So nobody wants that stuff. And then Nancy Pelosi with all the sort of elite stuff. And yet, so here's my question. I took a long time to get to it for you. Why do these people keep getting elected year after year after year? Why do the voters tolerate it? It's not like they have to choose between Nancy Pelosi and Trump. Like whoever else is going to run is going to be a Democrat too. But why do the kookiest ones keep winning the elections? What are your thoughts? I'll give you up till I'll give you a good 3 minutes if you need it to let us know.
Okay, well, let me correct you real quick. I know the bill you're talking about that Scott Wiener did, and I was living in California when that bill was passed, and I understood the controversy behind it. But basically what it did, and I did work in a law office for many years, so I have a little bit of knowledge of how these things work. The legislation basically equalized the penalties and the rights around age of consent between opposite-sex couples and same-sex couples. So he did not give any privilege to same-sex couples that opposite-sex couples do not already have. So he absolutely was not promoting pedophilia. These are very strict age of consent rules, having, with 2 or 3 year limits. So in other words, if you're 18 and you date a 16-year-old, you shouldn't be considered a sex offender for the rest of your life on registries, denied jobs, that kind of thing. If it's a consensual relationship, age of consent, I believe, is 16 in California. So he clarified, because the law did not cover same-sex relationships for men or for women. So if you were a year or two apart from your partner and in your teens, you could go to jail for years and be on the sex offender registry for the rest of your life. The law that he passed absolutely does not allow a 50-year-old man to date a 16-year-old. The law basically deals with, I think, 2 years max. I think if you're 19, you can go with 17. If you're 18, you can go with 16. So we're talking about a 2-year difference max. The age of consent stays the same at 16. But like I said before, it was only, the way the law was written, was only for opposite sex couples. So he revised the law to where he did not change the parameters, but he said it now covers same-sex couples. So that was not wrong what he did, and I have never heard him say anything promoting pedophilia. And I actually saw him with his partner when I lived in San Francisco. His partner is around his age. They're both like in their 40s. So he is not a groomer or anything crazy like that. I don't think he's a great politician, but he's not evil. Okay? So I do want to say that. What was the other thing you wanted?
Well, you got about a minute or so, but just why do the wackiest ones keep winning in places like San Francisco? Why don't they just, there's good Democrats.
I have to go really dark. Because it's worse than you think.
All right, but you got a minute. I'm just telling you.
I have a minute, but I can do this really quickly.
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi, I was there, so I got to actually vote for her in the last election, and I had a bunch of other choices. There was a guy named Joffrey who was pretty chill, pretty, a moderate, I would say, who I thought would be good, but he never gained any traction. The only person that had any traction besides of her was someone who has made statements in support of radical Islamic terrorism. So that was my two choices, basically.
Why are there no good choices, though? I know I put you on a hard. You got about 20 seconds.
Well, I said Joffrey was a good choice. You have to blame the people. Joffrey was a good choice. He had been in politics in San Francisco for years. He was known. He was very pragmatic, and the people just ignored him, even though he did a lot of good for the city. He should have been the front runner against Nancy Pelosi, not this kooky guy who was, by the way, representing big tech. He was the chief lobbyist for big tech. That was the guy who was second place against Nancy Pelosi. So because I saw the polls, I ended up voting for Pelosi. I hate to admit that because I know how corrupt she is, but if it's between her and the chief lobbyist for big tech, I'll vote for her any day.
All right, so there you have it. That's we'll dive into this a little bit deeper. Thank you once again, Joe Bennett. I'm going to do my disclaimer just because I haven't done it this hour, and then when we come back, in about 30 seconds, we'll do some abortion talk. The following program, views and opinions expressed by the host and guests of KVCM do not necessarily reflect the staff, faculty, and administration of the Los Angeles Valley College or the Los Angeles Community College District. All right, so just to wrap up the show for today. So I just want to talk about it. Was a big case. I'm in New York. There's all these. I actually went just to people watch. There's a huge protest. 17,000 people were at the one that I just went to look at to people gaze. And then all this stuff is saying that the Supreme Court is trying to outlaw abortion, and actually what they did was they just said, "Hey, it's not our purview at all. It's just a case of it's not in the Constitution." So how did all this start? Roe was, it was decided that abortion was a constitutional right based on another constitutional right. I'm putting in quotes, the right to privacy, and this was all based. There was a case, a couple of cases, but one of them was a case called Griswold, which was I think around 1965. About contraception. So basically the state of Connecticut made contraception illegal for non-married couples. Somebody sued. They said, "Hey, I got a right to get birth control pills or whatnot." And the Supreme Court, in a huge error, said that there is a constitutional right to privacy, and it's not actually in the Constitution, but they used a term called penumbras. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And they just said, well, it's kind of implied because, the government can't, they're not allowed to search you without a warrant and stuff. So you sort of have, you're supposed to have some privacy in your life. So therefore, you have a right to privacy, which means you have a right to use contraception. So it's very convoluted, and it's just not in the Constitution. So then once that was law under contraception, then they used that same principle to say, oh, well, you have a right to privacy. A woman's body is private, and therefore you have a constitutional right to abortion. And then what happened in this case was the Supreme Court simply said, to simplify a 98-page document, which I did look at a lot of it, they said it's not a matter of whether abortion is legal or not legal. There's just no right to privacy. So, and they also just sort of said, our job is to interpret the Constitution. We're not supposed to make up laws. We're just supposed to interpret it. And basically the Constitution does not have anything to say about abortion. It doesn't say it's legal, doesn't say it's not legal. It's just not in there. So there is no constitutional right to abortion. Now, every other country, or almost every country in the world has legalized abortion, and I believe every other country that has legalized abortion did it through the legislature, unless they're a dictatorship or a monarchy or something, in which case the king just did it by fiat. But everywhere that they have democracy, so we never did that. And we've had 50 years since Roe to pass a national law to make abortion legal, nationally. And the Supreme Court even said in this brief, if the legislator, basically the House and the Congress, pass a bill making abortion nationally legal, they go, we're fine with that. And they also said, of course, the states could do this. But they said, and then also, not for nothing, the Democrat Party has a majority in the House and the Senate and the presidency, and they brought up a bill just to codify Roe versus Wade, basically to make a law saying everything that judgment said. They could not even get 50 of their own votes. They could not even get a majority. I mean, they got 49, but that's not enough. They cannot even get enough votes to do it. So they won't pass the law. So really, so on one level, they won't do it the legislative way. The other way you could do it through a constitutional amendment, which also they just have had 50 years to do. They haven't even tried. They just sort of thought that this thing would happen. So really, I don't know what else to add, but it's just basically the Supreme Court said, hey, it's not up to us. It's up to the states. They go, you can pass national law, you can make a constitutional amendment, you can add it to the Constitution, but right now it's not in there, which I think that's what this court should do. So I support it. I'm against abortion, but I think it's morally wrong. I'm not quite sure if the government should be involved. But one thing we all should agree on, if we're honest, is that it's just not a right in the Constitution. And if something's not a right in the Constitution, the Supreme Court shouldn't just say, hey, same with contraception. It shouldn't just say, hey, all reasonable people think that contraception should be allowed. So therefore, even though it's not in the Constitution, we're going to pretend it's not in there. An example of something like that is after the Civil War, we had slavery. The president did a Emancipation Proclamation, and he said, hey, slavery is, all the slaves are freed. But that isn't like an official law. So they actually passed an official law. They added to our Constitution the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, which freed the slaves, basically outlawed slavery, gave them citizenship, and then gave them the right to vote in that order. So they didn't just say, hey, we won the Civil War. We all know slavery's bad, so we're not going to change the Constitution. Like, they actually changed the Constitution to reflect the way they felt. And if that's how you feel about abortion, then we should change the Constitution to reflect the way people think. Having said that, have we gone too far? This is the side issue. This is the social issue that really has nothing to do with it, but this is just my opinion. Have we gone too far? I mean, since Roe passed, we have killed, I don't know, you can call it a baby or unborn child or whatever you want to call it, a clump of cells. But in a lot of cases, in our country, you can get an abortion up to 9 months. Up to the moment you're giving birth, you can legally get an abortion. And all you have to do, people say, oh, well, it's harder. All you have to do is say the health of the mother, and that includes the mental health. So if the mom says, hey, I'm going to be really depressed if I give birth, and she can find a doctor that will do it, which there are, then she can get you can get an abortion after 9 months if you haven't given birth, which is crazy. No other country. Europe, you can only get an abortion up to about 12 weeks, which is 3 months. And that's sort of the difference between legislation and then just sort of the way we did it now. Democrat Party is fine with abortions up to 9 months. Nancy Pelosi said she supports that. Joe Biden hasn't explicitly said it, but he basically has said it. So having said that, yeah, 63, call them what you want, 63 million unborn babies have died. And then what do I see on the left? I see abortion activists. And once again, I'm not here as Mr. Pro-life. I'm not even religious. I'm not anything. But I do see people saying, shout your abortion, like it's something to be happy about. And I think it's, even if you need it, it seems like something you should grieve. So anyway, having said that, what are we doing now? So right now we have a system where some states are going to do it, some are not going to do it, which I think is, let's see what happens. And then lastly, I know we're up against a break, but the Republicans did this knowing they would lose votes. And I think that's kind of brave. They did this. They're going to take a hit on it, but sometimes you just do the right thing. And, even if it does harm you. All right. So I didn't plan on ending on abortion, but I guess that happened. We got the great show coming up next with Ray. Who knows what she will talk about? In the past, it's been movies, but last week it was music. So who knows? Stay tuned for the great Ray Show.
95.1 KVCM Los Angeles, Monarch Radio, the voice of Valley College.